Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Assessment Director meeting by webinar.
Yes.
So can everyone hear me?
The light is on.
Yes, the light is on, which makes sense. Okay. If you'll go to the next slide. So this is the information for the webinar, and hopefully everybody is connected with us. This is really interactive. We're keeping it very casual, obviously, this morning. And let's go through to the agenda, if you wouldn't mind. So today we're going to talk about future AD meetings, the SAGE results 2015, and many of you have already seen this in accountability. What I wanted to do here is provide you with the slides that we shared publicly, just to make sure that you have them and you can use them. So that you can use them in your any of the meetings or anything that you want for any of your trainings. Are we back on? Okay.
We're good.
Okay, great. We're going to talk about adventures and accountability. That's exciting. Utah Compose updates, the formative workshops, the principals assessment and accountability workshops. So a lot of this is material that we've talked about before, but we're giving you much more detail today. Course codes updates, the SAGE interim facts, assessment to achievement. We're going to give you a little more information on that. And then we have some pretty heavy-duty information on the K-3 reading. So that's our agenda for this morning, and hopefully we'll get through by 11 o'clock and get you guys on your way for your day. So let's start off by talking about the SAGE results 2015. Many of you, the next slide. Oh, okay. Future Assessment Director meeting. So today is a webinar, and we just wanted you to know that we have decided to cancel that October 15th AD meeting because it is UEA. So no UEA. Then we'll come back together on the 19th for the next Assessment Director meetings. So far this will be our calendar. Are there any questions about the calendar? It looks a little funny on that slide up there. Okay. Let's move on to the SAGE results 2015. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we released this, our SAGE results. You can see them publicly through the Data Gateway. We also have spreadsheets that we sent you and all of that. But what I wanted to do is just to give you a couple of the slides. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but just so that you have the slides so that you can use them. So the student performance is much improved for the second year of the SAGE assessments. Most of you know this information. Pretty exciting. All three areas, English, language, arts, literacy, math, and science, displayed improvement. The numbers show that without a doubt, Utah students are making good progress. The gains are a result of hard work by teachers, administrators, and our students with the support of parents, community members, and education partners. In addition, especially impressive, more students than ever participated in testing. Now, typically what you see in large-scale assessments over time is that when you have more kids test, you see sort of an erosion in the scores. So it's really impressive that we had increases and we tested more kids. So large gains were seen in secondary math courses as more students were enrolled in the prescribed course-taking pattern. So we had more kids taking the right classes, secondary math 1, 2, and 3. And so I think you see some really impressive gains there as well. So this is English, language, arts, literacy for the state as a whole. And we tested more students here, and we also went up. And most of you, not most of you, maybe some of you have seen these slides. Here's math. Math was the most impressive. There was a 13.75% change from 14 to 15 with an additional 15,000 students being tested. Remember that at the very bottom of the slide on English Language Arts, it does give you the little calculation. I don't know if you can see it from your screen about how you actually calculate a percentage of change. So it's not just the difference between 42 and 44. It's an actual percent change, and you're welcome to use those as you see fit. Moving along to slide 10, or science, we also see a 5.79% change from 14 to 15. So all three overall areas had increases. And then the next three slides are broken out by the all the individual tests. So Every single test showed some improvement. Fourth grade language arts was fairly flat. As you can see in English language arts and literacy, we had quite large gains, especially in the secondary, 9th, 10th, and the 9th and 10th grades, a little bit in the 11th grade. Let's look at math. And again, you see the quite impressive gains in math, secondary math 1, 2, and 3. We're digging deeper into seeing exactly what the differences in demographics were, who took the tests, that sort of thing as well. But those are great gains. And statewide, we also saw an uptick in science. And these are the science. We see a large uptick in chemistry and good growth in biology as well. And those have typically over the past have been really hard to see a lot of gains, so we're really pleased by that as well. So let's talk for just a second about what factors contributed to the gains. Slide 13. We know that teachers continue to focus on the standards with new and innovative strategies, and as students have become more familiar with the technology, we think that's also helped in the question types. And because of the adaptive nature of the test, the results are a better reflection of their true abilities. So knowledge is more completely tested when students don't just pick from the 4 answers like we used to, but can drag and drop, graph, calculate, construct short answers, pick multiple answers, formulate essays. And as students have been learning from the core over time, they've been immersed in the core for a longer period of time, those skills and knowledge have also increased. Now, this slide might be important for you to share with your LEAs, and that is thinking about how we compare nationwide, because this is often a question that you'll get from the field is, well, how do we compare? Well, right now, looking at the NAEP, which is the National, of course, Assessment of Educational Progress, typically there's large discrepancies between what states represent and what NAEP says. But now with the new SAGE scores and what we have had over the last couple of years, what Utah considers proficient in reading and math is also what NAEP considers proficient in reading and math. This report can be found, it's on achieve.org. I've listed the website there at the bottom if you'd like to read it. But it's giving us a true picture that what NAEP says is the same thing that we say. So comparing us nationwide, we now have indicators to be able to do that, and that's a really positive thing. So those were the slides that were shared with the press a couple of weeks ago, and then just on Tuesday, we rolled out accountability. If you want to go on to slide 15. This is a really high overview for your lay community members, but we had the three reports that came out, of course, were the School Federal Accountability, the PACE, and the Grading Schools. And one of the things that we attempted to do this year was to really focus on all 3 reports and not just school grading. Oftentimes the community at large picks up that grade and they kind of run with it. So my intent was to make sure that all 3 reports were focused on. And we noticed in the stories that came out they did speak to all 3, so we were pleased by that. We also talked a little bit about how results are produced and what the different views are. This is also a document that is on our website on student test results. So we talked a little bit about the raw results, what the public data gateway looks like, what the secure data gateway looks like, and then we talked about how what the differences are in accountability. So we know that we had some issues with the secure data gateway. We are working through some of the issues to make sure that those permissions are available and that teachers and principals can get in and look at that secure data gateway. And Julie, I'm going to have you pipe in here. So for our plans over the next probably 2 or 3 months, we're going to try to make sure that we have all the right permissions and that maybe we'll do some more training around the secure data gateway so that teachers and principals and LEAs as well as assessment directors are able to access the data that they need. Is that correct? Yes, correct.
We're working with Erin.
We're working with Erin to do that, Erin Bruff. So we'll keep you updated updated on any of those. Yeah, so let's stop for just a minute. Are there any questions that people are asking before we move on to...
Yeah, I have a question from Caitlin. When wanting to draw comparisons between our district and the state, should we look at USOE Data Gateway or Sage Portal numbers?
Data Gateway. Yeah, the Sage Portal will include all kids, whether or not they finished tests, some that didn't complete tests. Those numbers won't be quite as accurate as what we have in the Data Gateway.
Marie Evans, what is the best way to be added to the email list?
Send me an email, and then we'll have Tori add you to the list.
The AD list?
The AD list, if you're an assessment director, that's correct.
American Leadership, Erin Robinson, who is the contact person for questions in regards to grading schools?
That would be Whitney Phillips. She'll be up next, and she's going to be talking about accountability. She's our new accountability specialist.
Who do we contact to get access to Data Gateway? I have not been able to get in. This is from Renee Edwards.
Oh, hi, Renee. Yeah, you need to contact Aaron Bruff. He's the one that's right now giving permissions to everybody, and you absolutely should have permission. So email Aaron right away this morning.
Also along the same lines, Jenilyn from UCAS, if we are having account issues with the Gateway, who should we talk to? I've had troubles adding teacher accounts.
Yeah, we understand that this is an issue, and so all of those queries should go to Aaron, aaron.bruff, B-R-O-U-G-H, at schools.utah.gov. He's also, his contact information, if somebody would look that up. Just typed it in. Thank you, Julie. Julie just typed in his information. So we're working on getting a help desk and things set up, but right now it's not working properly, and we're trying to get... We understand that, and we'll try to get you in as soon as possible.
Robin Hedgecock from CASH, will administrators and principals be able to drill down further in the Data Gateway?
It's on the plan. It's not available right now, but we've ratcheted that up to be top priority, and so hopefully within the next couple of weeks that will happen, and we will be connecting with him to make sure.
Okay, there are a lot of questions coming in about Data Gateway. Would it be better for them to just contact Aaron Bruff? This is just for me because there's multiples coming in now.
Yes. He's right now he's our point of contact, and so you know we're working on it. We know it's a problem. We're trying to solve it. But for right now, yes, please contact Aaron.
Yeah, because there are a couple more questions from Judy Maynard and Caitlin as far as regarding filters and the details to Data Gateway. So they should contact Aaron Bruff.
Yeah, Judy, contact Aaron. Yeah, absolutely. And he can get you going on that. Any other questions about Data Gateway? No. Any other questions about where we are with student test results? Okay. So one of the things, the next slide, one of the things that we talked about with the press was that accountability values both growth and proficiency. And so we really talked quite a bit about what proficiency means, the percent of students on the path to college and career readiness in English language arts, literacy, math, and science, and growth, and how growth indicates how much gain the student has made from one year to the next compared to like peers. I used the following slide, again with the press, to show, to explain growth. This is a pretty simplistic graphic. I think that I used this with the ADs last year, but it's a fairly good graphic to use with your communities to show how growth in SGPs actually works and the calculation that goes with it. Now, for ADs, we can get into a lot more, and I think in the accountability trainings that Whitney is going to be running this year, we'll be working a lot more with the growth and how this works. But for front-facing or public-facing, this is a fairly good graphic that explains how that growth graphic works. So as far as the federal accountability goes, statewide we saw increases in overall points, total points. For elementary, we went from 321 to 329. And then for overall at the high school, we went from an average of 367 to 381. And I just want to call out that Dugway School out in Tooele District, yay Tooele, had the largest increases in total points. And it was Panguitch High in Garfield District that had the largest increase. So congratulations to those two. And Dugway School again had the largest growth with 158 points increase, and Tabiona High in Duchesne had the largest growth. So congrats to those two. So that's wonderful. Then we talked a little bit about the PACE reports that were also posted. And again, you're looking at, those are a little bit different. You'll have a K6, a middle report, and a 9-12 report. This one's a little bit tough to read, it looks like from here, but one of the things that that I really like about the PACE is it's not just using SAGE and the SAGE indicators to give you the accountability reports, but it's using a myriad of different indicators. So I think it gives you a much better, broader picture of what's happening at a particular school. Somebody asked me the other day, if you were to pick one of the three reports as a parent, which one would you pick? You know, where would you look? And I said, you know, I think the thing that would be most important for me is I would look at that PACE report, because the PACE report is going to let me know a little bit about chronic absenteeism. It's going to let me know how the third graders are doing at that school, how many of them are reading on grade level. It's going to let me know about 6th grade math and 3rd grade and 6th grade ELA and how we compare to the state. It's going to give me student group percent proficiency and a school snapshot. So it gives a much broader picture, and if I were a parent, this is probably the report that would give me the best indicators about how my neighborhood school was doing. So we saw an uptick in the 3rd grade reading. Again, you can see that we had upticks in math and language arts there as well. At the high school level, one of the positive things about high school is the graduation rate went from 81% to 83%. That's a pretty big jump in 1 year for the graduation rate, so that was positive. The ACT scores, which are a little bit different, and please remember that the ACT scores for PACE, we're looking at the total percentage of the population that had an 18 composite or above, because we're thinking about college and career ready. So that's different than the school grading ACT calculation. So we're looking at 70, and this stayed pretty flat. So last year we had almost 73% of kids that met that 18 and above, and this year we had 72.4 that met that 18 and above for that indicator. Remember that you also have college credit earned, the percentage of students enrolled in concurrent, advanced placement, CTE courses, International Baccalaureate. You also have the school snapshot, the demographics, and so the high school PACE gives you a lot of information as well. So these were the slides that we talked about, the press. The last one was grading schools, and grading schools we saw an increase in A's. So we went from 90 to 108 schools getting an A, 335 to 356 getting a B. So we have more A and B schools, and then we had fewer C, D, and F schools, and that's in the elementary. We saw the same pattern at the high school level. We went from 6 to 14 A's, 57 to 60 B's. We saw a little bit of uptick in the C's as well, but way down in the D's and down in the F's. And remember that for grading schools, we look at the percentage of students, the proficiency, we look at the growth, and for both the federal accountability and for the state accountability, we also look at the below proficient kids again and see what their growth looks like, so in both of those calculations. One of the things that is happening over the next couple of months is the state board will take up again how to calculate growth. And they're going to be using the SGPs, but they're also going to be considering several different ways of calculating it because of the way the state statute reads around scaled scores and having to report scaled scores. So just know that the state board is going to be taking up this issue again. The other thing is that the ACT for grading schools is the percent of students that meet all 4 college and career ready benchmarks. So they have to meet English is an 18, reading is a 22, math is a 22, and science is a 23. So nationwide, only about 20% of students actually meet all 4 of those college and career ready benchmarks. And nationwide also, just kind of keep in the back of your head that the national average is a 21 composite on the ACT. Of kids that had that average, the 21, less than 1% of those kids actually meet all 4 college and career ready benchmarks. So this is a really rigorous requirement, right? And so we're going to be looking at some ways maybe to begin to talk about that and see if we can get some positive traction around looking at that in a different way. Thank you. Yes.
This question is coming from Debbie. Where can we find the breaks for each of the grades, the points at the top and bottom of each grade?
The technical manual has that. So, and the technical manuals are posted on the accountability. So under assessment, on our assessment webpage, there's a tab that says accountability, and on that accountability tab, you will see those technical manuals, and it gives you all of the rules about every single accountability that we run.
We have another question from Tim at North Star. If I read the graph right, it looks like the number of high schools reaching composites of 18 dropped. Is that true? If so, how does that support our big growth in SAGE scores?
I'm confused. Okay. If you're talking about ACT is a completely different test. So it wouldn't have anything to do with those increases in SAGE. So what we saw this year are that we did have increases in SAGE across the board, but ACT dropped by about 0.5%. So ACT did not see the same kind of increases that SAGE saw across the board. Does that answer your question?
Tim, does that answer your question? He put yes.
Okay,
it seems like we would see increase in ACT as well, but okay.
Different measure, so I'm not sure. All right, so let's move on. And so anyway, you're welcome to use any of these slides in any of the presentations that you have. We know that they're just big 20,000-foot views, but I get lots of questions asking for these slides, so you're welcome to use them, and that's why we put them here in the AD meeting this morning. And now the next person is going to be speaking to us is Whitney Phillips, and she's our new accountability specialist, and she's going to be talking to you about adventures in accountability.
Good morning. This is my first webinar, so be kind. Okay, let's go. So during the auditing process, I decided to track all of the questions coming in from you all because this is the first year that I've worked with Utah's accountability system. I thought that keeping track and using data to improve our processes would be helpful. And so in this, I determined that these percentages of questions were asked. So about 33% of the questions had to do with the SURF files. And this is just the auditing process from the time you received the SURF files until Tuesday. And so you see that MOVE-IT had a bunch of questions, SGP questions. So these are the percent of questions that you've asked. And I also looked at the source of these emails and compiled them and determined that of all of the emails and also the phone calls that I received across the state, that 92% came from charter schools. And this is really good information for the state to know. This means that we have a challenge ahead of us to better prepare the charter schools with information to help them through this process. And this was, kind of disproportionate to what's really out there. And charter schools, as we know, that a lot of people that work in charter schools have multiple hats on. So we want to help support you in that. I wanted to talk about this list that I gave you at the last AD meeting that described the priorities that I have set in listening to what is important to you. I wanted to show you this slide again so that you will keep me accountable to what I tell you I'm going to do. On this list, we have number 1, the technical manual that I just mentioned and that there's a link for. Again, Joellen mentioned that you go to Assessment and Accountability, and then you go to Accountability page, and it's right there on the top. Right under that is also the Alternative Accountability Tech Manual. This tech manual is a really good resource because there is a lot of information that I can't remember that I need to constantly refer back to. How many tests are required to calculate certain aspects of accountability. It's difficult to remember all of these very, very small business rules. It's by no means a finished product, but it's about a 40-page document that should be helpful. Okay, the next thing is we talked about, let's see. So here's the technical manual, and from the field, I would like you to use this chat function and tell me if you have actually looked at the manual. Can someone tell me that they've looked at it? Adam says yes. Let's hear it. Okay, there's some notes. Oh, a lot of yeses. Tooele, is that a name?
It's a school.
I know, I'm just teasing.
Oh.
So a lot of yeses. It looks like a lot of you have visited and seen the tech manual, and some of you have not. We've in my signature in all of my emails, it is placed right below my phone number so that when people have questions, they should refer back to it. So if there's a question, you should look at that. Also, I'm looking for feedback on this manual. We want a single source of truth as far as what we do here, how things are calculated, and all the policies. And so this will be the single source of truth as far as the accountability processes go. Okay, so email me if you have any questions on that. The second thing that we talked about last time is that we would be conducting trainings. We had our first one in Tooele. There were no problems. There were a few issues with the technical side as far as logging on, but we worked through that, and it was also a condensed version. But you can see on the 23rd, actually we were going to be in cache on the 23rd. That's been changed, but everything else is the same. Although this is called assessment and accountability training for principals, if there's other administrators that are interested in this training, take a look at it, and we're going to have you go through. We're going to talk about accountability and also how to go through the data gateway. And if you are attending one of these trainings, we'll send an email to remind you of this, but please make sure that everyone attending is able to log in. That was a big issue in Tooele, that a lot of people had not logged in. I want to remind you, when your password is reset, that you need to log in before midnight of that night, or you will not be able to log in. Again, if you cannot log into the data gateway, we've been told that you should email Erin. Also, one thing that I am trying to push is to get feedback from LEAs. This is one forum that we can use, but it seems like a one-sided relationship. And so I want a little more back and forth as far as how we can improve. I've never been an assessment director. I do not want to think through processes that will not be useful to you. So because you're an expert in what you do, because you've done this many years, please give me feedback. We will also be, one of our biggest priorities right now is to streamline the special code process. We want to not use spreadsheets, and we're going to do our very best, and so we are talking through a few options on that. And we will also be discussing the definition of what full academic year is. This was also on my list of things to do this fall, to have a user-friendly accountability website. I have not at all done one thing on this other than complain. And it seems like my complaining hasn't made a difference, so we will be putting forth efforts into making this a little more user-friendly. We set aside some time to, to discuss, to have you ask questions, and then after this, after answering a few questions, I'm going to have David Saleh come and go through a couple of slides that show some changes in the data gateway that we are proposing and ask for feedback.
I have a question from Thacker, Davis School District. In your consideration of avoiding error spreadsheets, referring to the opening of the window date for Sage Summative in TIDE would eliminate a ton of error of students who arrive and leave a district before the window even opens.
Yeah, so this is Julie. I'm not going to walk across the room. We're going back to the drawing board. Yeah, they can hear me. We're going back to the drawing board, Brandon. The problem is there is no opening date for SAGE because we have a year-round testing window, and that is the struggle that we face with using the enrollment data in SAGE for that purpose, and that's what got us where we were. Oh, hi, there we all are. Wow, thanks, Jerry. So we're going back to the drawing board. Where's the camera? That one. That's our camera. I've been talking with David Smith and UOD and are looking forward to some feedback through that group. And if anyone has any other ideas on how we can improve the accuracy of that special codes tracking process, you can email any one of us. I mean, Whitney and David and I and our UTREX team are putting our heads together on this. So there will be more to come.
And we understand that this has been a real pain point for everyone for a couple of years. And we did what we thought was going to help this last year, and I don't know if it helped or if it made things worse, but we're looking for answers too. So we want to make sure that this process becomes less painful in the future. So any and all ideas, welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a quick poll that I want to try. I've never used this before. Can everyone, let's see. I want to know just a very simple question, if you could all answer. Because I wasn't here last year and my colleagues have one side of the story, I'm wondering what your side is. So compared to last year, how did accountability go? This means the auditing process, the response time that we gave you, the accuracy of the data, the improvement of processes that we've been working on. This would be a really helpful way for us to see how we're doing. Yeah, will you click on the screen? Okay, we have about 40 respondents now out of 126. As you all know, a high response rate is very important. This is all anonymous, so I don't know who you are. I'd like to get at least, it looks like it's about, as you can see here, it looks a little bit like the letter grades. We did a little better than last year, but most of you think it's about the same, and some of you not as well as last year. So those 7 of you that did not feel it went as well this year as it did last year, I want to know why. So please send me an email and share your story. We have a question?
Will you just explain to them that there is a pod in the middle? Some of them are asking to ask the question again, or they're answering on the conversation.
Oh, I see. Okay, there is a pod in the middle of the screen that you should see, and you just click on your answer, and it is anonymous. Oh, it looks like I can broadcast results now. Here we go. So now you all can see what your responses are thus far with about 85 respondents. Yeah, and it looks like some of you are new assessment directors and they don't have anything to compare it to, and so you will at least get a pulse on how it went this year compared to last. So be lucky you weren't an AD last year. David, are you ready to go over the...
Sure.
Come over here. David found out he was doing this about 15 minutes ago, so thank you, David.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
Just a little FYI from Justin at TCSD, the pods do not appear on iPads. So maybe some of the people that are on iPads.
Okay. I'm David Saleh. I'm the data specialist in assessment. For those who don't know me, what I want to talk about is there's some new developments on the Data Gateway. As of right now, you can see the percent proficient at the LEA, at the state level, then the LEA level, and at the school level, and that's as far as it goes. They're currently working on developing the next level down where you'd be able to look at it at a test level. This is just a sample of what it will look like, so that you'd see kind of the tests up on top. So this would be 5th grade science. And then beneath, you'd be able to see each of the different subparts of the test.
Reporting categories.
Reporting categories is the official term that we use. And you notice underneath then there would be several teacher names. Right now it just says teacher 1, teacher 2, and so on. But you're going to be able to click on those and be able to dynamically interact with it and add teachers, remove teachers, and then be able to more easily compare teachers in a single school or that taught the same test subject. That's the first one, and then...
I have a couple of comments.
Sure.
David. Susie, that is very exciting. When will this be available? Robin Hedgecock, I want this now, please.
It's still probably at least a month out, is what Aaron has said. But they are working to get things down so you can drill down even further into the tests. So any feedback? One of the big questions they have right now is, so this looks all fine and good if, say, you're a smaller LEA or a charter, but let's say you're Alpine or Davis, who I believe are watching this right now, and you don't have 25 teachers that taught 5th grade science. You have well over 100 perhaps, and you can see the chart beneath. It's not as readable as the chart above. So
Sorry. Hang on.
We went to a different one. Yeah, so this one here, so one of the questions Aaron had, because he, again, is the one who's developing the data gateway, was how would you like this to look? Do you need the ability to look at everyone in the LEA at once? His suggestion was that this would only be available at a school level, so you would drill down, your LEA, then the school, and then you'd be able to look at specific teachers like this within the school. Or would you want there to be some sort of a checklist where you could select multiple schools at once to look at which would be most useful, particularly for large LEAs? Because if there's too much information on it, it's completely unreadable. Yeah, maybe a way to filter and look at a certain school.
So David, as folks look at this, are they sending feedback to you or to Aaron or to both or to one or the other?
They should go to Aaron. Aaron is the one who is in charge of developing this. We are just the messengers.
Right. So we're in this position where we are users of the data gateway, and most of the data in the data gateway is assessment data, but we don't control the development of the data gateway on our team. So we're working with Aaron to try and improve communication and priorities, and the more feedback we can get from you that either we can flow to Aaron or you can provide directly to Aaron, the faster these things will rise to Aaron's priority level for development of the gateway.
Yeah, it's sounding like there's quite a bit of interest in being able to see multiple schools and having that as a filter option. And yeah, and the way this is going to work is this is.
So I know this one. So when we're in the data gateway right now, and you click on the SAGE area of the data gateway, it pulls up these aggregates that you see on screen that are statewide, district-wide, school-wide. But one thing that's not in place right now is the ability to click on the the test, and drill down further. So that's another feature that Aaron has said is a month out. Yes, I will use quotes on the month.
Yes.
That we're looking for feedback on as well, right?
Yeah, and this is actually going to be the level above what we were just looking at. So what you can see now is you could see LEA, then you could go state. Oh, no, that's the wrong way. LEA, then school, and then the development's going to be that you'd be able to click on any of the bars that were LEA or school level, and then this would come up. So you'd be able to break it down by test. Right. And then the level we were just looking at a second ago is the next level down, which would be to be able to look at teacher level. So this one is not going to be nearly as cumbersome, even regardless of how large your LEA is, because again, you would just be selecting which tests within ELA or which tests within math or science, and I think there's only 9 maximum in each.
And Ron did make a comment as to we have a need to drill down to teacher.
Agreed. The more Aaron can hear that from you, the less I have to say that over and over again in the office. So, you know how that is, right? We are trying to advocate for you, but the more Aaron can hear these priorities directly from you, the more it will be heard. So, and then this screenshot is that drilling into each of the tests by the subject, right? So you go from subject, into the schools, into the tests. So these are all images that Aaron, these are directly from Aaron pretty recently to be able to click into. So right now, the ability to drill down to...
Because we're talking about drilling down to the standard level, so how fine-grained is that?
Right, so SAGE data only reports at the reporting category level. That's all the data gateway will have. The ORS system has that next level down, that's that content strand, benchmark, whatever we want to call it, that only gives strengths and weaknesses. But the data gateway will stop at reporting category level because that's the intent of the assessment.
There's a question from Teresa Wilson. What were the values on the teacher view?
Well, let's go back up to. So these are change from the state average by teacher on reporting category. And this is made up data, right? Of course, I mean, this is whatever. But here's the 0 line is the state average. So we're showing that on the reporting categories, teacher 12, I don't know which one is which. The black one is a teacher. The also black one is the other teacher. So you've got teacher 2, teacher 12, both performing, their students were performing more poorly on reporting category on electricity than teacher 1 or teacher 23, because those are the teachers we have selected here. Okay, good.
She said, okay, change from state average.
Yep.
Got it.
Change from state average. So the question on that one is, this first graph looks, nice and usable because I can kind of tell what's going on there. Once you add 40 teachers to it, does it lose its ability to be powerful? And so how do you want those teachers to be grouped, to make that usable for you? So whether you want all the teachers in the district or just all the teachers in a school or all the teachers in multiple schools, whatever you would find useful would be helpful for us to know. Is there anything else on these?
Those were developments.
Yes. So we've talked to Aaron about the ability for school and district level folks. I know that was a question on the chat to see student level data. We agree. I agree that that would be usable. We would like that to happen quickly as well. So there's all this data that kind of is super critical for you to have, but it's still coming in development. So again, the feedback from you all will be helpful in moving the development along. So Kim Rathke is unable to join us today with some updates on Utah Compose. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. All right, the short story on Utah Compose, as most of you who have tried to use it and your schools have tried to use it have discovered, is that we are having a tremendous amount of grief getting students into Utah Compose. Kim and I and David had a conference call with Measurement Incorporated's leadership team yesterday on this issue, and we expect to see some changes happening in the next couple of days that will help mitigate this issue. The trouble is coming with teachers going in and creating their own classes, and that's mismatching the data we're sending from Utrex. So that feature is going to be deactivated. Teachers need to go in and create a new account, follow the instructions. It would be helpful if teachers are wanting to use this for this to be kind of a guided activity with them, because they're kind of going out onto the website and clicking all around and making a mess of the data is basically what's happening, and we're trying to figure out how to mitigate that as best we can. So in Utah Compose, there's the Students tab, and then instead of adding new students, please don't have teachers do that. We want those students to come in through from Utah Compose. And these are just some screenshots showing that process. So we know that, we feel the grief and the pain that has been experienced by your schools, certainly not as much as you have felt it and your schools have felt it. We are trying to mitigate that as quickly as humanly possible. And I can't see the questions.
Teresa Wilson, when will teacher ability to create their own rosters be disabled?
Hopefully today. At some point. I can't remember if it was it last night, David, or was it tonight?
I don't remember when they said specifically. We talked about it yesterday, and
Yeah.
They said they were going to turn it off.
Pretty sure it was today. That may be tonight. So we are blocking that so that we don't keep getting these Mickey Mouse students added that are conflicting with the real student rosters coming in from Utrex. Yes?
Jennifer from GWA, will the student data be lost?
So that is going to cause a problem, because if teachers have gone in and manually created students that we don't know who they are, and then the UTREX file comes in, I don't know how to match those, right? So it's creating orphaned records. So we're trying to find a process with Measurement Incorporated to get some sort of an extract that we can kick back to you all, so that we can get you to add an SSID to who Mickey Mouse is, so that we can get those student records synced up. But the sooner teachers can stop adding students, the easier that will be to reconcile. So the student data is in there. So you've got Mickey Mouse, then you've got, real student Smith here. The sooner they can start using real student Smith, the better we will be.
Okay, there's quite a few questions. Brooke Anderson, has anyone else found courses split in Utah Compose? Tara Lynn from the Salt Lake City School District, is the ability to add students also going to be blocked?
I hope so.
Robin Hedgecock, what can we do about what can we do about teacher creating duplicate accounts?
Right. So we're going to have to sort through the mess of all these duplicates. We've got duplicate teachers in there. We've got teachers who can't get in there because they're not following the instructions. Then you've got duplicate students in there. So we will be working with you directly as we find out where your data is for your schools. But if you can put out, the plea and the cry, and the help desk at Measurement Incorporated for Utah Compose has been telling teachers when they call, stop doing this manual creation process, and that should be disabled shortly. So we know it's been a bit of a mess as we've rolled over to this new upload from UTREX and the teachers having this web service to validate their accounts. This whole multiplication of the Social Security number is a bit tricky to get that account to be validated. So we need teachers to follow the instructions that have been provided. Any specific questions? And we can jot these down. I need them to go to Kim, because Kim is day-to-day operations for Utah Compose, and we can get her to give you the most accurate information for each of these questions that are coming in. So we don't want registrars entering students into Utah Compose that is creating duplicate students, that it's going to orphan the student portfolios from this longitudinal path that we have. That's why we want students to come in statewide with their SSID, because we want the student portfolios to follow the students. So when that's broken by manually adding students in, we don't have any way to fix that. So more will be coming on that. We will likely need your assistance as assessment directors to help make sense of these orphaned accounts, to see if we can preserve any of the work that's been done in the last few weeks going forward.
Just for clarification, we are getting multiple questions in regards to this. Would you want them just to contact Kim Rathke?
Please, Kim can answer specific details on anything. Getting new teachers in, they've got to go through and go in and click on the screen and enter the product of their Social Security number and all that, and that gets them in. So that's how teachers get in, and then not adding students manually. Okay, so we'll watch some questions. So this is also Kim's. Okay, so this is just a review of the sessions that we have in Utah. All these systems. OnTrack. OnTrack is the system that has all of the workshops that we are providing. So the workshops that Whitney referenced, that are the principals outreach workshops. Then Kim has these Utah Compose and formative assessment tools trainings that we wanted to give you a reminder for. We have very few teachers or district folks signed up for these workshops. So it helps us if you'll actually have folks go sign up so that we know there's an interest for them. What usually happens is we get about twice as many people show up as sign up, but that's pretty hard for us to monitor. So the more we can get participants registered beforehand, that can help us make sure they can log in ahead of time. And it also helps us to be prepared. Do we need more sessions, or should we be consolidating sessions? So that will be helpful for us. And here we are. So the principals workshops that Whitney referenced, this is the other set. We've talked about this. Folks will be getting an email reminder. For the principals workshops, we do use all three systems, the Data Gateway, the SAGE portal for ORS, as well as Utah Compose. And as Whitney referenced, and Justin can verify, I know you're out there, Justin, it took a considerable amount of time to get the group of folks logged into these systems during our first presentation, and we would like to spend that time talking about the data, not figuring out how to log in wherever possible. So if you can work through with your principals and help them get access to these systems ahead of time, that will help us to be able to serve these purposes better.
What about getting new teachers into Utah Compose?
Yeah, so Judy, there are instructions in Utah Compose. Email Kim and she can forward you the consolidated instruction sheet.
Also, some brand new teachers in our district cannot get into Utah Compose through the process indicated in the PowerPoint.
So contact Kim and she will help you troubleshoot. And Kim will be very responsive on email.
The students that are identified as 1% are not in Utah Compose. Are they unable to use it if we cannot create accounts for them?
I'm not sure where we're at on excluding students who are participants in the DLM, the 1% students from Utah Compose. If you have students that are in that service area that you would like to have use Utah Compose, maybe email Kim and we can bring up that conversation on including those students in the data file. We know that many of those students' abilities don't allow them to interact with the Utah Compose system, but I don't know that they were excluded intentionally or not. So if you'll send that email to Kim as well and Theos, then we can follow up. So moving on, just a few comments on core code updates. So this is related to SAGE. And do I dare try? On our website, we don't quite have a new core code document posted yet, but under Assessment and Accountability, under Assessment Directors, under Directors Resources, which most of you have discovered has a lot of information. Right here in the middle of the screen is a link that says SAGE Summative and Interim English Language Arts ELA Core Codes. That's actually ELA Math and Science. That is last year's file. We are so very close to finalizing this year's finalizing the file, and this link here will be updated as soon as that is ready. There's been a couple of core code changes in secondary language arts. Grade 11 has had a little bit of movement, and there's been a couple of science courses, specifically concurrent enrollment type of courses, that we're just chasing down. So the vast majority of core code eligibility for SAGE assessments is the same as last year. There is just a little wiggle in Language Arts 11 and a couple of the secondary science courses. So be aware of that, and we'll get that posted and put that out in a memo as soon as that is available.
John Allen from Nebo, remember to post the Excel version of the core code. We like to use that data to match to our master schedule. The PDF
Okay.
is a pain to match.
That's
Noted.
fair.
Noted.
Fair.
I mean, it's a subset of the master Excel file that Teaching and Learning provides, and we don't want to duplicate their efforts. But yeah, we can certainly pull a subset of that. David, would you note that so that we have that?
And we have Ruth Ann from Uinta. Can I go into Utah Compose and place the SSID or send the SSID on the spreadsheet back to you?
So Ruth Ann, don't do anything with these kids that are mismatching yet until we have a mechanism in place, and then we will send you whatever data and with instructions on what we need
sent the
to
data
match.
yesterday.
Oh, David sent some
And
data.
said if they, it was the mismatched ones from Utah Compose, and I said if you want these to, I sent the through Move It yesterday. I sent what Measurement Incorporated sent us as the orphaned ones, and said there are plans to merge these. We don't know what that mechanism is going to be just yet. I didn't give a timeline because, again, I don't have a timeline from them, but said that if we don't have SSIDs for these students, we can't do anything.
Okay.
Conversely, they could also contact these teachers, I would assume, and say, if you haven't done anything with these yet, you can delete them because they are breaking the system. So there's a few options they could go with that.
Great. I didn't know we'd sent that out, David. Thank you
Yeah.
for
David, there
confirming
is
that.
a question directed to you from Robin Hedgecock. At this point, I have highlighted the ones that I've changed. Will that work?
That should be fine, I would think, at this point. Because we've also received feedback that some of them were from last year. Some of them were students who had graduated. And so they shouldn't be in the system whatsoever, and they certainly shouldn't be merged with anything.
Right, so don't send Utah Compose back these spreadsheets. Send them back to David only through Move It. There's all sorts of student data in these spreadsheets. Do not email them back. Send them to David through Move It, and then if you have issues accessing Move It, as we often do, especially as your staff changes, contact David and he can work through that as well. Okay, all right, so all those questions, let's get those sent to David, and he can work through those. I didn't realize those were set, so thanks, David. So interim, we're working on developing some sort of a frequently asked questions document for the implementation of these interim assessments that are going on right now. So we've got the class period, we have the full reporting. And let me just tell you what's happening. We have teacher goes in, administers an interim to their class on Tuesday. Wednesday, they go in to finish the interim, and they all see question 1 again. So the questions come to help desk. Well, why did the tests all get reset? Well, that's usually not what's been happening. What's been happening is the teacher clicks on the class period on Tuesday, and the kids take part of it. Then when they go in on Wednesday, the teachers are clicking the full reporting interim, and it's starting all over for those kids. This is a huge problem. We cannot merge these test records. If they take writing under class period and the rest of ELA under full reporting, there's not going to be an overall score because I can't merge them. So that's the biggest frequently asked question at the moment that's causing a great deal of pain, is the proctors are not selecting the appropriate version of the interim. So this is one of the reasons why you now have the tool that's set testing windows for schools and for your LEAs. In fact, I had this conversation with 2 assessment directors yesterday. One of them, the teacher had given the summative instead of the interim, and the other, this had happened where they'd given the wrong version of the interim. If you have interim assessments being administered, please go through and watch the training that we provided for the interim assessments. I think there's some interim administrations going out there that are not following the TAMs that walk through these steps, and where some of you may have not had a chance to watch the actual training we've provided for it. There are some gotchas with the interim. Those are a couple of them. If you have concerns and questions, you can always contact Jared or myself or the SAGE Help Desk. But this we know is happening, and we beg and plead for you to try and help your teachers not hurt themselves with the interim and all these versions that are out there. So testing windows could be set that'll block the summative from being given, or block the other version of the interim from being given, or they've got to be super vigilant in selecting the correct version of the interim when they launch the test administration system. Okay, questions?
Tara Lynn asked, can the interims be closed, then opened using the window feature?
I want to say yes. So you set the dates that the interim is open. So if you set the dates for the interim as being October 10th through 20th, then they can't get in before the 10th, and they can't get in after the 20th. And then we could set another window later on. Jared is nodding his head yes as well. So we think that it works that way. These testing windows are new, so let us know if you're running into questions with those. But that is the purpose of those. And they're also specific to test. So you can open, you know, 3rd grade this week, and 5th grade this week, and biology this week, or whatever's working for you according to your local testing schedules. So it's class, yes, the testing windows are class period and full reporting specific. So you can give class period interim to 3rd grade. You can give full reporting to 6th grade. Whatever the purposes are that you're meeting with the interim can be set using those testing windows. So,
even more specific to test.
yeah, to test. So it's all very specific. So the user guide talks about it, the training talks about it. Email us. Ask twice, test once. Please, please, please. Okay.
So we've had some questions. There's no email, or there's no slide on this. I've had lots and lots of questions about the opt-out, which we are now referring to as parental exclusion. And tomorrow in the board meeting, the board will take up this issue. The rule will be updated, and hopefully a form will be approved. And the form will have the state assessments on it that students can opt out of. It will be in PDF. We will post it, hopefully an editable PDF is what I want. You can take it, put it on your own websites. It needs to be filled out 1 day prior to the test, and we think it's pretty specific. There's some kind of there's some language in there that hopefully will be educational for parents that decide to do this. And so please stay tuned, and hopefully we can get this issue resolved. And I apologize that it has taken so long, and so many of you have had so many questions about it. So I'll let you know after board meeting tomorrow, and we will post whatever happens. So we have some questions. Yes.
I have a question from Tara Lynn. Can they opt out of civics?
Well, they can, but they probably won't graduate. So it is, we have legislation that is in conflict with each other. It is a state test, and so therefore it can be opted out of, but we also have a requirement to pass the civics exam to graduate. So if I were a student, or a parent, I probably would not opt my student out of that test.
A question from Clyde Mason. How do we resolve the federal requirements to do WIDA access?
WIDA will not be on the list. WIDA is not an opt-outable test. Thank you, Clyde. I knew you were going to have a question on opt-out. I just knew it.
He's typing now.
Is he typing to me now? So ask me something really hard, Clyde.
He said thank you.
Oh.
And Helen Olson, what is VIDA? But it's WIDA.
It's WIDA. It's the test for English language learners. So, and like I said, we'll give you an update tomorrow or Monday about what happened in the board meeting tomorrow for opt-out. Any other questions on opt-out? All right, Darren.
Thanks, Joanne. I will be really brief. I just want to give you an update and a heads up on the Assessment to Achievement project. Our 45 schools that are participating in cohort number 1 are up and running with Assessment to Achievement. And they've made progress on the 3 big objectives for the project. The first objective for the project is to build teacher and educator literacy around assessment and data. We do a lot of work as assessment directors and in the assessment department to put data in teachers' hands, but sometimes we fall down in supporting them in interpreting and accessing and then using that data. The second objective of the project is to support teachers in using evidence-based instructional strategies that relate to what the data tells them for their students. And Assessment to Achievement is using the most recently identified best practices for instruction in the classroom. And the third objective of the project is to build a culture of collaboration within schools around PLCs or PLC type structures. So our cohort number 1 group has used data from SAGE 2015 to identify long-term, medium-term, and short-term goals, and they've created assessment plans to monitor their project towards those goals. The 45 cohort schools have identified specific evidence-based instructional strategies that every teacher in the school is using and implementing to move the school towards those long-term goals that they've set. And our 45 schools have put in place PLC-type structures so that teachers are working together within content areas and across content areas to meet those goals. So the progress we've made is exciting. There is a flyer that you received and that you can see on your screen as a part of this meeting about cohort number 2. We have space for 45 more schools to begin cohort number 2 next school year. We will, and there's more information about the project and about cohort number 2 up on the assessment website right now. We will distribute applications for cohort number 2 next month in October. But now is the time to start thinking about which schools in your district might benefit most from this project. For example, if you've got schools with whom you've shared data, but they don't seem to know how to use it to affect their instruction, that's a perfect candidate for this project. Or if you've got schools whose demographics would seem to indicate that they should be experiencing great growth, especially in terms of the new accountability data that came out, but they're not, that would be another great candidate for this project. So as I mentioned, we've got 45 spaces for the next cohort starting next year. There's more information on the website, and applications will be available next month in October. If you've got any questions, please feel free to contact me. I am the project manager for Assessment to Achievement. All right, and with that, we'll move on to the next topic, which I believe is K3.
Just to get everyone an update, the K3 Reading Achievement Program is
is recorded. So we are going to try to play it, and please let me know if you can hear the first slide.
All right, for those of you that were around last year, we spent quite a bit of time in various assessment director meetings talking through the changes to the Uniform Growth Goal in relation to K-3 reading achievement. So I am here today just to give you an update of where that board rule played out and what the next steps are for that work. So just to kind of do a historical timeline for those of you that have been around and for those that might be new to this idea, the Uniform Growth Goal is related to the K-3 reading improvement funds that each LEA receives. And this is holds you accountable on third grade reading benchmark stats and whether you get to continue to receive funds for K-3 reading improvement. Funds are taken away after 2 years of failure of meeting your Uniform Growth Goal. So when I came on last fall, I had a lot of feedback from the field around Uniform Growth Goal and kind of dissatisfaction in the area. So working with assessment and teaching and learning, we went out and did some stakeholder meetings with assessment directors, curriculum directors, literacy directors, and special ed directors to say, here's what we currently have, how's this working, what's not working, and took that feedback and made some revisions and came back to those stakeholder groups in the spring of 2015 with a proposal of where we wanted to head and sought feedback from stakeholders to move forward. The feedback was very positive, and so we proceeded with a board rule amendment, which was proposed to the board in May, and they were very open to the idea, and so we brought back the actual board rule in June, and then they went through its third and final reading in August of 2015. And it is currently posted on the rules website as of September 1st. So you can see the updated rule. We also have the handout for you available as we go through this piece of the webinar. You'll be able to find those in the files that Joel sent out in the email, but you'll be able to see that full board rule. We're going to jump in and look at a couple of key components of some of the changes in that rule. In terms of what the old rule kind of laid out in terms of how the Uniform Growth Goal was calculated, and we call this the UG for those of you that are new to Uniform Growth Goal. The past few school years was based upon the percentage of students who benchmarked on end-of-year DIBELS, and specifically students in third grade. Although you report on students in grades 1, 2, and 3, the accountability piece is only for the percent of students in third grade who benchmarked. In 2013, or FY13, you had a baseline group of students, and whatever their percentage was, your future goals were based on that particular student's group performance. And then each year after that, your UG target incrementally raised each year based on that baseline group. And all of that was based on composite score. So they have to be benchmarked on the composite. The new rule is going to be focusing more on student progress or growth. And so it's going to be related to the percent of students who made typical, above typical, or well above typical growth. So in DIBELS, there's actually 5 pathways of progress that a student can make. And those are below typical, well below typical, typical, above typical, and well above typical. And so 3 of those pathways will count positively towards your performance as an LEA, and then if they make below or well below, those would be students that wouldn't count into your percentage positively, at least for you. The target that the board set was based on the national average of the percentage of students making progress, and that is 47.83. And so we'll be looking at that piece as part of your UG qualification, whether you're past your UG or not. And so they have to show typical or better progress from beginning of year to end of year. And the goal is not going to increase each year. So the 47.83 will be the same this year as next year, unless we look at impact data and say this is a little low or a little high and go from there. Our state data is significantly higher than the 47.83 of the data we've collected this year, and so we may return to the board, but we definitely want some more data in place before we look at raising that target. And it will still be based on the composite score, but when you're entering the data into your SIS system, it will no longer just be a yes-no data point. It will actually need the yes-no as well as what the student's composite score was at beginning, middle, and end of year. So that's a change that you should see in your SIS system, or you will need to make if you're not on one of the state-owned SIS systems.
All right, so a couple of questions have come into the webinar. Joelle, I don't know if you want to field these.
Yeah, if I can.
Oh, hi. Okay. Sarah. So Sarah, tell me your last name. Sarah, don't move. Don't do anything.
Don't do the audio.
So Sarah is here. Sarah, here's our microphone. And here are our questions. So the first one is, why is it only for third grade?
It's only for third grade because that's the accountability piece.
And there we are. There's our camera. Hello, everyone.
Because we are looking, you do have to report 1 through 3, but third grade is the only grade that we take into consideration for accountability.
Susie has a question. So the old way of calculating growth was also only third grade?
Yep. Any other questions?
From American Leadership, Aaron Robinson, are we still using the former goals in DIBELS?
The composite scores, like the benchmark scores, or which goals?
You can hear these response. Former benchmark cut scores.
They will say the same, yes.
How many districts and charters did not make the UG this past spring?
So this past spring we didn't have, well, for the old goal, are they asking, or the, because she will be, Jennifer will be talking about the data that we asked some schools to bring in to look at growth and what the percentage would be. So are they asking the old goal?
Yes, old
okay.
goal.
6.
I am using PowerSchool. What do we need to do to be able to enter composite scores?
So it is a UTREX submission, so you do need to make sure that you are giving all of the subtests in order to get the composite score, and then entering the yes, no, and the composite score to be under the new uniform growth goal.
So it's just an additional variable that will be in you that you'll submit through UTREX. Besides the yes or no, you'll also have a composite flag for composite score.
All right, Susie, what if a student goes from well below to below? Will they count for growth? There's not a spot to put composite scores in SIS.
There will be a spot to put composite scores.
Okay, we are going to continue now with the next slide.
Board rule language. So the next piece are the actual board rule language. So you'll see there that the growth goal that LEAs will use will be based on that percentage of third grade students who made typical, above typical, or well above typical progress from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, as measured by DIBELS, and that the target percentage is that 47.83%. Then each year you will submit your data, and that's going to be your composite score, so that we can calculate the progress of each student in grade 3 within those 5 pathways of progress.
Okay, I do have a couple questions. Lena from C.S. Lewis Academy. When will the spot be available in SIS to enter composite scores?
So I think each LEA, this is Julie, each LEA needs to work with your local SIS provider to work through that process as all data elements are. So you know which SIS you have, you know who those people are, work with those people to find out what the timeline is for implementing these requirements.
And I'm sure that in the data conference, typically the IT people have been told that I will follow through. So Tori, if you'll make a note, that I'll make sure and follow through the IT folks to find out the timing with Malia and those folks exactly when they expect to see that.
For our SIS
For our
system.
SIS system.
UTREX has the field, I do know that.
So if UTREX has the field, then it's, yeah.
It's ready to receive your data.
Okay, EBLS guest, if the composite score section is not yet available, when do we need to have that data input?
Well, of course you're going to be inputting 3 times a year just like you did before. And if the UTREX is available now, you should just work with your SIS to make sure that you're collecting the data the 3 times a year that you need to.
Tara Lynn, where can we get the algorithm for pathways of progress?
So at the DIBELS Institute, Jennifer, hopefully you are all going, Jennifer will be explaining the pathways of progress and how all of that works down. If you have Amplify, if you go through the vendor Amplify, you already have it. It's already in there. If you go through DIBELSnet, there's another way you can get it. If you go through vPort, there is no way for us to do that until the very end of the year when we get everybody's information.
And Tara Lynn, so for Illuminate, what will happen is that you'll enter those composite scores, and then that will be submitted through the state, and then you'll get back those pathways to progress, because I don't believe Illuminate at this point has those calculations built into it.
Susie, if a student makes growth from well below to below, will those students count as growth?
If they make typical or better progress, yes. If they don't, no.
No, they wouldn't. They have to get to at least a 3 or above, right? The typical or above typical?
Right.
And this is just kind of a visual description of those 5 pathways, so you can kind of think of it as restaurants in terms of a 1-star restaurant versus a 2-star versus a 5-star. You want at least 3 stars for students in terms of being typical or better progress, so you're looking for a 3, a 4, or a 5 in terms of the pathway number, or those descriptors with the typical, above typical, or well above typical. And those will be the pathways that we will have students hopefully making typical or better progress, at least 47.83% of students in your LEA.
Okay, I think from the previous slide we have a question from Kim Lovell. So can we get the cut scores for the pathways percentages?
So the way, there is no cut score for a pathways percentage, it's an actual calculation that goes on, and so that's why we have to have the composite scores. So I can't give a specific number or score that.
Although we will be working with Pearl and Good, because I think there has to be a way to see if those, we'll work on that to make sure we get you some more information.
An additional piece on the board rule amendment was the addition of the composite score. So in the past, you've just been entering that yes-no data. You will continue to enter yes-no, but you will also enter a composite score that designates what the student performed at the beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. One thing we ran into last year was some people were not completing all of the measures required to get a composite score. So you'll definitely want to check in with whoever your testing person is who actually does the administration and ensure that they're administering all the measures required to get a composite score, especially in third grade with your accountability year. A number of LEAs didn't know to give the days, and that is a piece that is required to gain a composite score. And so just checking in to make sure all measures are accounted for, and we'll go through those measures here in just a moment for third grade. And you'll submit those through U-Checks like you've always done, and they're due on or before July 1 of each year, although there is some language around when you enter them throughout the year. So
will we be able to use an alternate to DIBELS for our DLM students like the first testlet?
That's the plan right now. Yes, but we're not quite ready for that this fall. But yeah, that's going to be the plan.
Let's look at the composite scores a little bit closer. So this is third grade example, and what 4 measures go into the third grade composite score. So you'll notice at the top, you've got their DORF words correct. This is their oral reading fluency and the number of words they read correctly, which measures whether they're reading at an appropriate rate. Then you also have their accuracy percentage, like how many errors did they make, and are they reading with a high degree of accuracy that goes into the calculation. You have their retell score, which is related to whether they're reading orally with understanding, as they're actually having to tell about the passage. And then finally you have the days adjusted score. And this is the piece that we've seen some LEAs skip, and you will not get a composite score without all 4 data points. So it's going to be really critical that you have all 4 pieces in place to be able to get that composite score. If an LEA does not have composite scores, they will not be able to go under the new UGG calculation, and you'll be placed under the old system with the incremental growth in percentage. So for those of you that know what that means for your LEA, I would really do some real analysis to make sure you have composite scores now as the benchmark window closes September 30th to ensure that you'll be able to go under the new UGG system rather than the old percentage system. We did collect some impact data thanks to Assessment and DMG, the research group at DIBELS. They did some analysis on the data that you all sent in. We had 24 LEAs submit their data from 2013-14 school year to kind of see what kind of impact will this have on the field if we were to change the UGG this way. And thank you to those 24 LEAs that took the extra time to submit some data. And that data is here. It's not in any particular order other than by percentage, but the names don't mean anything. So where it says LEA 1, that has no meaning. It is an LEA, but it's not like LEA number 1 in the state or anything. So these are just some examples of what the current percentages of students making typical progress look like throughout the state in 13-14. It is a small sample size, but it kind of gives us an indicator of we have a number of schools that would make it under this model, and we do have some schools or LEAs that would not make it, just as we currently do. So that percentage of students making typical or better progress does not mean that all LEAs will still pass this goal. So that's important for you to know. If you're curious, if you did submit the data of which one of these LEAs is yours, we'd be happy to share that information with you. I'm sure you could contact Julie Benson in assessment or myself, and we can get that detailed information to you. This is the 14-15 sample. You have the full sample as a handout or an email attachment. And so this is all this customers that used Amplify last year. This is the breakdown of those schools, and you'll notice there's about 70 some odd LEAs on there, and there's only 3 or 4 LEAs that wouldn't have made the typical or better progress in 14-15. This chart, I'm just going to explain how to read it, so if you do look at the handout, you'll be able to kind of comprehend what it says. So starting on the left is just the district. Again, those district numbers have no meaning. They're just my way of not having to be able to do de-identifiable data. The second column where it says all students, that is the percent of students in that LEA that made typical or better progress. So LEA number 1 had 39% of students making typical or better progress, whereas LEA number 2 had 95%. In the column next to that are all students, including the highly skilled reader criteria. And we talked about this last spring. The highly skilled reader criteria are students that score in the 85th percentile on all measures that go into the composite score. Those are students that are already achieving at high rates and high levels, and no longer are we worried about them making such significant progress on basic foundational early literacy skills. We're going to be working on more complex skills, so we're not anticipating seeing typical or well above for these students. These students will automatically count positively for you in the system. So any student that has 85th percentile on all the measures that go into the composite score will automatically be marked typical or better for progress. So you'll see in some of the LEAs that changes their percentage to a higher percentage. It doesn't take anyone down. So for example, in LEA number 1, they had 39%, but when you take into consideration the highly skilled, they would have 41% students making typical or better progress. Then moving to the next few columns, this is saying if students came in at this certain benchmark status, what was the percentage of those students making typical or better? This information can be useful for determining how well are interventions working, how well is core instruction working. So for example, LEA number 1, of the students that came in well below benchmark, 40% of those students did not make adequate or typical or better progress. And so as that LEA, and then you'll get below benchmark at BOI, 17% only made typical or better. What we're doing in core instruction as benchmark is not high either. But also interventions are not working all that well. So it's going to give your LEAs some indicators of how well are the things we're doing for students in well below benchmark status versus below benchmark, and benchmark, how well is it working. And then the final column, again, takes into that highly skilled reader criteria, which would be students who are benchmark at beginning of year. What percentage of those made typical or better progress when you take into consideration the highly skilled criteria. So there is about a 2-page spread of these, and if you're interested again in knowing if you are an Amplify user last year, we'd be happy to share with you which school you are for LEA, so that you could see where you currently are performing to see if you would be safe for next year if you continued on the same path with what would the likelihood be of you meeting the UG percentage.
We have a question from John Allen at NEBO. SAGE question. Can we get an 85th percentile automatically qualifying on the SGP?
This has to do with the DIBEL score, so it's not the SAGE. It's easy going back to SAGE, and if he's talking about a particular accountability system. And we can take this question offline too, and I can talk to you privately and explain what I need to explain. Is there anything else?
There's a last.
And then in terms of trainings, the pathways to progress piece and understanding these 5 levels and the pathways for students, we know is kind of a new addition to DIBELS, and so we really wanted to be supportive of different stakeholders statewide. So we are offering 3 different leadership or institutes for DIBELS for different audiences. So the first one is the DIBELS Leadership Institute, and this one's really going to focus on what are pathways to progress, what do they tell us, what's the purpose, how do we use them, and how are they related to UG. And also DIBELS is coming out with Lexile correlations, or already has, and we'll talk about how those could be used in relation to instruction. Then the DIBELS Next Mentor Institute, this is for getting people in your district trained, or your charter school trained on how to administer DIBELS, how to interpret the data, and how to coach other teachers in using the information. And we are paying for that certification, so we are offering the training. It does have a cost, but it's free because the state is covering that. But we would love to have people come and get certified to be certified DIBELS trainers and to build some capacity out in your LEA. So that is the middle section on the flyer that you'll see there. If you have instructional coaches that might benefit, this might be some district leadership, people that are really going to be the ones training how to give the test, but also how to interpret the data. And then the final one is DIBELS Lead Instructor Institute. This is more for your instructional coach, principal, or classroom teachers. We're going to dig deep into progress monitoring and the power of progress monitoring and how to use it, how often, all of those questions, how to do a survey assessment, which is really determining when you would want to progress monitor out of grade level, and also looking at diagnostic assessments based on the screening assessment to then determine instructional needs for students. So those are 3 institutes. We hope for people in your position that you would be able to attend the DIBELS Leadership Institute as part of having a better understanding of the pathways to progress and getting a lot more depth than we were able to provide in this part of the webinar. So they're on track for you to use, and if you have any questions, feel free to email myself or Julie Benson as well. We are kind of heading this institute section up.
Okay, I have some comments with John Allen at Nebo. This might be a question that we could answer for you offline. He did mention, sorry, I like the 85 percentile that is found in the UG. I wish we had that on the SGP. It rewards the extremely high students who might not make lots of progress. So we will note that, John. We have another comment from Abby Turchetta from Peterson. This might be something I just misunderstood, but those students that are on or above grade level that might not have a high percentage of improvement from beginning of the end of the year to end of the year, will those students count against the school even though they are or above benchmark, or is that just for students that are below benchmark?
So they have to be in the 85th percentile. So if they are in the 85th percentile, then they will count in the positive no matter what. If they're not, and they don't make enough growth, then they will count negatively.
And then there is my contact information. And again, any questions, please send them our way, and we would be happy to help. Thanks.
Thank you all for attending. If there are any other questions, please let us know. Great work so far this year. Yay, we got SAGE scores out. Yay, we have accountability out. And please, we're trying to do a lot of outreach this year, so whatever trainings that you can come and participate in, we would love to have you, and just let us know. And we should be available. Please contact us by email. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. And we won't see you next month in October, but we will see you in person in November. So thank you so much.